Yes, I usually make a joke at the start of these interviews, but today I'm starstruck. Today's guest has won the English Premier League, played in the Champions League, played in the same team as Giggs, Beckham, Scholes, Keane, Solskjaer, the Neville brothers, Van Nistelrooy, and he's been managed by Sir Alex Ferguson, Tony Pulis, and Alan Pardew. It's Luke Chadwick. Luke, how are you?
Yeah, very well. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
That's okay. So, very obvious question I've been asking everyone. Are you missing coaching? Are you missing football?
Yeah, missing it a lot. Obviously, I've got a couple of kids at home, so I've got a chance to go and play with them a little bit. But the German football started on the telly, but it's not the same. So obviously missing everything about football at the minute and can't wait for it to get back, of course, whenever it's safe to do so.
Right. Do you still play football, Luke?
I still play. I live in a little village in the south of Cambridge and I still turn out occasionally for the village team. I'm not... the legs aren't what they once were, but it's that sort of drug in it. I have to play. If I get the opportunity to play, I always have to give it a go.
Have you started moving back from midfield or moving forward from midfield? That's what tends to happen as you get older, right?
I moved forward up to as a striker and I had a bit of success, but the old legs have got even slower now. So I've moved back again. I sort of just sit in front of the back four, do very little in the way of running, as little as possible.
Spraying passes.
Yeah.
Listen, Pirlo got away with it for years, so, you know.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not quite at his level yet, but if I keep practicing, who knows?
Brilliant. Look, you're involved in the Football Fun Factory. You want to tell us a little bit about Football Fun Factory? So
it's I've moved across to the Football Fun Factory with a couple of ex-colleagues of mine, and it's an organisation just about, as the name would suggest, about football being fun. So it's for children aged between 2 and 12 years old. It's not about development and finding a way into a professional club. It's purely just about having fun playing football, where we use football as a vehicle really to really promote positive life skills like communication, teamwork, that sort of thing. So it's all about developing as people just as much as obviously having loads of fun playing the game that we all love.
That sounds great. You know, I've noticed, especially in recent years, there's been a push towards providing coaching to young players to give them the tools to make it. We're guilty of that as well. We do up here in our academy. But, you know, fun sessions should be every session, shouldn't they? And that's something I think what you were saying there that I need to take away, and probably other coaches need to take away as well, and reflect on making it more fun and not just about giving them the tools to make it. Yeah,
and I think, like you talk about the tools to make it, and it's everyone wants to get as far as way in their journey, but I think it's so important to remember it is the journey what needs to be the most important thing, not the outcome of what happens at the end of it. I'd spent some time working in academy football and found that maybe the enjoyment of some players is lost along the way because it is all about being a professional footballer, when I think it gets lost a little bit of what we all do the game for. I remember me playing as an 8, 9-year-old. I'd obviously fantasise about being a footballer, but it's not something that mattered. It all about playing with a smile on your face, and that's what keeps you in the game, regardless if you go on and become the next Lionel Messi or if you're playing in the local team on a Saturday afternoon. I think all that matters is you enjoy and love what you're doing.
Yeah, with your mates as well. I think that's a huge thing. And this situation we're in just now has highlighted that, you know, kids miss football, but they also miss playing football with their friends the most. Have you been running any Zoom type sessions or anything like that with Football Fun Factory during this period?
We've done a little bit, but the technology is not... we struggle. Well, I struggle with it a little bit. We've tried to do a bit. We've done a lot of challenges and that sort of thing in terms on our page and trying to get children engaged and sending their videos in and that sort of thing, which has gone really well. But we did one live session, which was really good. But we had a little area where we could do that. But since the lockdown now began, obviously we're unable to travel and to the space where we could do the sessions.
I've been doing them in my kitchen in my conservatory, but just on a one-on-one basis. See if there's any more than 2 people in the chat, all the windows in Zoom. Oh God, it gets really confusing for me.
Yeah, I'm the same. I really struggle with the technology. That's why I was a little bit late coming on here, because I had to copy and paste it, put it in a box. And I'm pleased with how much I've come on really in the technology stakes. There's still a long way to go.
Brilliant. So, look, you've been in the news quite a lot recently, talking about mental health and your experiences growing up. But as an aside from that, the Football Fun Factory has gained a lot of exposure. I think in every article I've read, you've mentioned the Football Fun Factory. Do you kind of hope that a lot of coaches that are reading the article are taking away the fact that football should be fun and fun first, development second, that kind of thing? Or has that not crossed your mind when you've been talking about it?
I think if it weren't for the Football Fun Factory, I wouldn't have the social media and all that set up. So it was trying to add a bit of value to the social media, and obviously with the mental health and that sort of area that we're all talking about at the moment. But obviously last week was Mental Health Week, and the situation we're all in terms of the lockdown, where it is a real strain on your mental health, where it's going to fluctuate a lot, going up and down as the weeks go on, really. So it was, the message I was trying to get across was to everyone, regardless of it's got anything to do with football or not. Well, the main message was, when we are suffering and we're feeling really low, the best thing to do is to talk about that. And I think in football in particular, as coaches, we have a great opportunity to build relationships with young people and give them the opportunity and a voice to speak about their problems.
Yeah, I mean, I think speaking out like you did was absolutely fantastic. And I think, again, the motivation for coaches during this period has changed from coaching as you will, and it's moved to making sure the young people we work with are okay, and we're giving them some extra on top of that. So, I mean, I applaud you for speaking out. Look, I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard that in recent weeks, but yeah, it's been great, absolutely brilliant.
Thanks very much for that. I think the reason that I'd done it was a really positive message that I wanted to get out. I think it maybe got lost a little bit in some of the press in terms of just talking about what happened and who it happened with, which probably overshadowed it a little bit. But the messages that I've received, quite a few from people saying that it's helped them, is obviously massively humbling for me, and probably one of the best feelings I've had. Obviously, it's great scoring a goal in a football game, but to hear that you've helped someone in any tiny little way is a huge compliment and something that I'm quite proud of, really.
Brilliant. That's great to hear you've been receiving messages and stuff as well. Look, let's rewind a little bit. Can you give us a little breakdown of how you got started in football? These days kids will get taken to a structured practice, but was it the garden? Was it with someone, your dad or something like that?
Yeah, so I probably would have been about 4 or 5 when I started playing just out in the garden. I live in the countryside, so I lived in quite a small house, but we had a really large back garden, so there's always the opportunity to go and play there. So probably about 4, 5, 6, I'd play with my older brother and dad in the garden. Then when I was about 7 or 8, I went to my first live football game. I went to Cambridge United at the Abbey Stadium, and after that, I just seeing the game live, the atmosphere, being so close to it, I just completely fell in love with the game. So that was probably the thing that really pushed me on and wanted me to play. Back in my day, we started under 9 was when you first started playing. So I joined a team called Melbourne Tigers, near where I lived, as an under 9. And back then we were straight onto a 11-a-side pitch with full-size goals with little tiny kids running around on them. Because I was really fast, I used to stand up front. My teammates would whack the ball over the top. I'd chase it and got loads of success scoring goals. And I think that gave me the confidence to really kick on and think that I was really good at the game, and gave me the confidence to obviously carry on through the levels.
When you were in the back garden with your brother and your dad, was it just fun games? Were you trying to recreate goals you'd seen on TV? What kind of thing did you do in the back garden? Can you remember? To
be honest, in the early days, I can't remember. I've got recollection of the 1987 FA Cup final where Spurs played Coventry, and I remember my brother was a couple of years older, and him and my dad were heading it to each other. And then when I had to go, I couldn't do it, and they sort of, I don't know if they laughed at me or said that they could do it better. And I remember running in the house crying to my mum, saying that they were saying that I weren't as good as them and all that. I had that recollection. After that, I used to, I don't know if you remember that we used to have the football pools that my mum used to do where she used it. So I used to have that, and if I was outside, I'd have it, and I'd just pretend I was playing in all the games and scoring all the goals for all the different teams. So that is the memories, like either in the house with a small softball when no one else was in the living room, my mum was cooking tea, I'd play as a coffee table as a goal, and then outside in the garden with little wooden goals that my dad had put together, using them, and just sort of imagining that was all these different players and playing in all these games.
That's brilliant. I think, see, some of the stories you're telling, similar to my youth, you know, I used to be kicking a ball in the back garden, and my dad would always be in goals. I'd be taking penalties against him every day. You know, it's great memories and great times. Just as an aside, look, see, Championship Manager, I used to go Cambridge all the time. I'm not sure why, I just liked the name when I was younger. And I had a decent team as well.
I never
Dublin, Dion Dublin, I remember.
Yeah, that was a team that obviously made me fall in the love. Like the team was really going through the leagues at the time, so that was a fantastic time. People speak about Championship Manager. I never really played computers that much. I remember having a Commodore 64 when I was a kid, and it was a cassette game that you had to put in, and it took like half hour to load, and then sometimes it just mess up. But I never really got into the Football Manager, all that sort of thing.
It's really interesting. So I've spoken to a few footballers now, and I think every single one of them has said, I wasn't into computer games when I was younger, just into practicing football. Or some of them had an older brother who they would compete against, and, you know, that probably gave them a level up, for lack of a better description, when developing their football skills, because they had to develop different skills to beat someone who was older, quicker, stronger. So, you know, it's really interesting, you know, pattern emerging when I'm speaking to footballers. I don't know if you found that throughout your career and throughout your coaching as well. Players that are more developed probably shy away from computers, or have an older brother or someone older they compete against.
Yeah, I think the older brother, even the brothers, is a great way to compete, because obviously it's someone that's always there. For the older brother, it can be obviously that they can see that they're bigger and stronger, so they can win a lot of the games. But the younger brother, obviously, like I was, you've got to fight and strive and compete to really try and be up to your elder siblings' level. So I think that did help me a lot growing up. And obviously, my brother's friends that coach, so I'd always be playing football a lot with older people, which certainly helps. I think the computers, I think it's completely different now, because everyone seems to be playing on them now. Because like when I was a kid, the computer games weren't that good really, that sort of keep you in charge. But I do think it is probably, children do spend a little bit too long on the computer games these days. At the same time, you do notice from playing all that the time on FIFA and the like, is the incredible knowledge that children have of sort of European leagues, European players now off the back of playing there. So I think it's finding that happy medium of not being on the computer all the time and also getting plenty of practice. And obviously the health benefits of playing football as well are huge.
Yeah. See, sorry, I missed who your first grassroots club was, but it was 11-a-side. I mean, I remember those days as well. They were torturous, trying to run up and down 11-a-side pitch. Did you manage okay? Because I remember when I was younger, I didn't quite manage to get up and down. I was a fullback and I was told to get up and down the pitch. You were a striker, obviously, but did you manage to get around the pitch? Okay.
Yeah, I think because I was a striker, my job was to score the goals, really. And I think the pitches actually being that big helped me a lot in terms of the joy that I got, because I was really fast, to score loads of goals. I don't know if the pitch was tiny, obviously I would have developed my close control and that sort of thing, but the fact that it was so big made me stand out a lot and potentially got me noticed. Don't get me wrong, I don't think we should ever go back to them days, because it was ridiculous, really, the size of the players on the pitch is that big. But I think it did actually help me really progress because of all the open space that I had to run into.
So how did you get that technical balance then between, you know, you were a striker, you had the open space, you were running onto balls and finishing. How did you get the close control technique? Was that just playing in the garden or with your mates?
Yeah, I think obviously a lot of playing in the playground and that sort of thing in them tight areas. Without a shadow of doubt, the most time that I spent playing football was on my own. I was just addicted to it. So I'd be out in the garden. So I think that close control comes from like doing your keepy uppies and that sort of thing. But I think that came maybe a little bit later with me, where I could always run with the ball really quick and sort of move the ball close to me. But my first touch weren't always brilliant. But I got away with it because the pitches were so big and I could run in behind. And I think the fact that I had so much joy, it gave me the passion to practice all them other things that I needed to practice at to become a more complete player as the years went on.
I was going to ask if you practiced on your own, but you just mentioned it there. What kind of thing did you do on your own? Was it keepy uppies, ball off the wall, you know, standard stuff that we all did when we were younger?
Yeah, I think it was just, I just tie it in with, like I say, like the fantasising of the games, like pretending I was different players. I spoke about this to someone yesterday, saying I think the environment that you're in tends to be the sort of ends up the player that you sort of end up to be. So as a young player, I was still quite fast and I loved running, like big touch out my feet to run past people. And it was all the stuff that I'd do in the back garden, 1-2s that I'd sort of play off the concrete posts on the fence. And when as a player, I do play loads of 1-2s. I'd probably as an under 13 player once, I played against Joe Cole. He was at Arsenal at the time. And he blew my mind with what the skills that he was doing in that game. And then I read later that he sort of honed his skills in his house in a tiny little garden where he'd had to keep the ball really close to him. And I think it is the environment that you sort of built up in, where you spend a lot of time playing, does shape you as a player that you become as the years go on.
And you never think of it like that when you're younger. You're just practicing, having fun, and imagining being, the best player in the world and things like that. It's amazing how when you look back and see how you've developed as a player, not me, you, but as you've developed as a player, where you came from and how you got those skills. I think that's a really, really, really interesting story to tell, especially when I'm hearing from ex-professionals like yourself. Did you play any other sports when you grew up, or was it just football?
We used to, so me and my brother used to knock about with another pair of siblings, one my age and one his age. We used to play quite a lot of cricket and football, and tennis were the main sports. Like football was always the main one. We'd play tennis when we could get into the tennis courts. Well, I was always loved playing tennis, to be fair. I weren't brilliant at the game technically again, but I could run around and get to all the shots and just keep sort of wearing people down. I really enjoyed playing tennis. And cricket, again, is something that I never really enjoyed playing in terms of 11v11 in a proper game, but really enjoyed playing it when it was just like 4 or 5 of us knocking around and you got a chance to bowl and bat on a real regular occurrence. So they were the 3 sports that I played. There probably weren't much else as a youngster apart from what we would do at school in terms of athletics and that sort of thing.
So your tennis and your cricket, did you think playing those sports helped you in any way with your football?
I think just sort of being active, and I think football was always a thing I loved the most, but I think having gone through the coach education and that sort of thing, you do realise, obviously not at the time I didn't, how important it is doing them other things and not just specifically doing one thing for your whole life. I think it does help in all sorts of your ABCs, your sort of twist and turn and that sort of thing physically. And obviously all sport is competitive. As soon as you start playing it, you want to win it. So I think it obviously helps in that way as well.
With your grassroots team, look, did you train, was it just once a week, twice a week with a match at the weekend? What kind of structure was it?
So when I first started, we'd play on a Saturday morning. There'd be one training session a week, like of an evening, and the game on the Saturday morning. And I think when we went into under 10s, and it turned to the game on the Sunday, but it was always just one game, one training session, one game.
So it's fair to say you practice more on your own than in a structured coach-led environment.
Yeah, definitely. To be honest with you, I think that helped me. I think finding my own way helped me a lot. Obviously, I loved training. I loved going and catching up, that social sort of thing with your mates to play like that. But I think the terms of the real practice that I got, obviously I didn't realise it at the time, but it was sort of playing on my own for hours and hours and hours. And then obviously trying to go and put them skills into practice in the training session and the games when I was playing with my peers. Yeah,
that's great. So practicing on your own, figuring things out, and then trying to take it into the game, which is probably the right way to do it when you're younger. So you're obviously spotted. Was it just Man U that spotted you? Was there a few clubs sniffing about? Can you remember what the process was from getting, or when you first realised you were actually getting attention from these kind of clubs?
Yeah, so I played for my grassroots team, and there was also an area team called East Anglia Boys, where the perceived most gifted in East Anglia would come together and we'd play games, but we'd go on tours. So I was lucky enough to go to Belgium, Denmark, even America we went away to, which was fantastic. And they had sort of a relationship with Arsenal. So off the back of playing for East Anglia Boys, I ended up signing for Arsenal as an under-13 player, when I trained at Highbury when I could get there, which was quite... Well, I couldn't always get there because my parents, so they had a gym at Highbury, so they'd be training there once a week, and then we'd have a game on a Sunday. Once I went into year 9 at secondary school, then I'd start playing for my Cambridge schools team, where the best players from all the local schools had come together and play. And that was probably bigger football back then than even the professional clubs. And it was off the back of that where I was scoring a lot of goals, where I got invited up to go for a trial week at Manchester United. So I was at Arsenal for a season. Then as an under-14, I went up to Manchester to trial there.
That's interesting. So at Arsenal, they let you play for your school team as well, because I don't think that's allowed with a lot of professional clubs and youth academies these days.
Yeah, so back then the schools would take precedent. The professional club had no say in who you could and couldn't play for. So it wasn't like it was called a centre of excellence back then. It weren't an academy with the amount of contact and training that the kids get now. It was simply a training session if you could get there in a game. And then your school's game would be considered more important than the professional team game on the Sunday.
Right, that's really interesting. See, back then, I speak to a lot of people, and back then the system seems to be in the S form signing. I'm not sure if that was a thing in England, but certainly in Scotland, seemed to be a lot better than it is these days, where kids are taken really young into a pro youth academy. They're not allowed to play for the grassroots team. They're not allowed to play for the school team. They develop really well, but they miss out on a lot of the social stuff. So it's interesting they let you play. When you went to Man U, was it the same there? Would they let you play for your school team, or was it just simply training with them?
So back then, I would imagine it's quite similar to in Scotland. You couldn't sign. You could sign for a year for a centre of excellence, but again, it didn't stop you playing for anyone else. At 14, you can sign schoolboy forms, and then that'd be a 2-year contract while the club would decide whether you would get a scholarship or not, or a YTS 2 years at that. So they still had I'd still play for my school's team a lot of the time, but when I got to my under 15 year, I'd go up to Manchester every Friday. I'd leave school early on a Friday and go up to Manchester for the weekend and be on the bench on a Saturday for the A or the B team, and then play for my age group team on the Sunday. So from year 10, the school's football sort of eases off a bit, and there's the odd county game. There's not a game every weekend, and then I'd be at Manchester for the weekend. I'd still play for all my school's games at the local school and that sort of thing.
So when you're at Man U, then you just went up there for the weekend, and there was no training during the week?
No, so they did arrange for me. To go and train at Stevenage Borough, who were a local non-league team, and I went once, but I didn't really enjoy it. In terms of, in my opinion, I was better off playing at school every day. I'd still practice on my own, and then going up there at the weekend. I do think we may be guilty now of too much training at too younger age sort of thing. But I think that's the way the game's gone. And I completely understand it with all the clubs, because you have to do it in line with the EPPP, etc. And that's how it's all worked out. But I think back then it was more, you'd play a lot more games than you'd train. So I'd probably play a school game and I'd play on a Saturday and a Sunday, which is probably deemed too much now. But I don't really understand that, because the amount of training the kids get is probably more than what you've done playing in the game. I'm a great believer of the game probably being the greatest teacher, and being on the pitch and playing in games is the best way to learn. Yeah,
I think I agree. The children's wellbeing rules and stuff like that prohibit multiple games in a week. For a grassroots club, but you could play for your school, over an evening, and then play for your grassroots club on a Sunday on the odd occasion. So the rules seem to contradict each other sometimes. See, where was the Manchester United Academy? Where did you play and train when you were up there?
So when I was a schoolboy, I'd go up on a Friday night and stay in digs, and then I'd go to Littleton Road, which is like a piece of grass in Salford that's about half a mile from the Cliff training ground. So that's where all the games are played for the young lads. And then the training that the other lads my age would have done that could get there would have been indoor at the Cliff training ground, where there's a big indoor arena there as well.
Nice. And who was in that age group with you? Anyone we know? That was a leading question, Luke.
So in my age group, who came through with me, I spent a lot of time with, is Michael Stewart, a Scottish player. I'm sure you've heard of him.
I think everyone has heard of him in Scotland. He's on the TV and stuff.
Yeah,
very vocal. Yeah.
And when I started my scholarship, John O'Shea joined into our age group, and he was like a Rolls Royce. You could see back then what a fantastic player he was. They were probably the two, along with me, that had some involvement with the first team. Obviously, John O'Shea had a fantastic career there. Me and Michael played a few games. Paul Rachubka was a goalkeeper who had a career in the lower leagues of English football. The year above me was Wes Brown, who obviously had a fantastic career. Richie Wellings, who had a brilliant career and was a great player as a young lad. David Healy, who's obviously a Northern Ireland legend. He was always a fantastic finisher. They're probably the ones that had a career in the game that I can think of in terms of the age groups. The year below me, Danny Webber had a really good career, and Jimmy Davis, God rest his soul, obviously had a fantastic career in front of him before he was tragically killed. They're probably the guys in my sort of age group that had a career in the game.
And who was your manager in your team?
So when we started for our first year, it was Eric Harrison. He was just coming to the end of his time at the club, and he was a hard man to please, but like a wonderful coach, and really taught you early on what it meant to be a Manchester United player. Then after that, it was Dave Williams and Neil Bailey were our two youth team coaches.
When you say taught you what it means to be a Man U player, what do you mean by that?
I think when you go up there full time, obviously you understand as a schoolboy that it's an honour to play for Manchester United. But I think when you're in the building properly, you start learning that it's more than just being a footballer. It's how you behave and how you're perceived on, off the pitch, and everything you do from then on in. You're a Manchester United player, so it needs to be done properly.
Professionally. So if you started out off as a striker, did you go to Man U as a striker and start dropping back? What was the process for the position change?
So I went up there as a striker, still as a centre forward. We had 4 centre forwards in our year. 2 of them were young England internationals and another gifted lad. And I think, whereas I was still getting some joy as a striker into my body strength, etc., I didn't hold the ball up probably effectively enough. So I was sort of played on the wing for a couple of games and really excelled and actually loved playing there because it suited me so well, because I loved running with a ball and dribbling. I'd get more opportunity to do that in them areas. So it's probably from the age of 17 that I was really seen as purely a wide man and playing off the right, and more often than not as a younger player off the left-hand side, where I just found my balance was easier for me to get round people on the outside playing off the left. So that was my position from then on in, really.
So if you were only going up to Manchester on the Friday night and you had games on Saturday and Sunday, how did you know the style of play that was required, the identity, the game plan, or was there none of that? It was just basically, here's the team, here's the formation, go and play.
Yeah, so we always used to play 4-4-2. I think every school holiday I'd go up there and stay up there for the school holiday. So I had a pretty good idea what was expected. I'd sort of comfortable in the environment and knew all the players that I was playing with then. So I probably went up for a week in a half term. And then that summer, still as a schoolboy, spent the majority of the 6 weeks up there. So after that, I was sort of settled and everyone knew each other and I knew the style of play and I knew what would be expected of me in the games.
Yeah. See, as part of that training then, when you went up for school holidays and stuff, what was the kind of training like? Was it more technical, tactical, physical? Was it a mix of the three, or did it change as you progressed through the age groups?
I think the beauty of Manchester United, why you fall in love with being up there, is because everything is quite simple. As much as possible, we were playing games. We're joining with the scholars. We train amongst ourselves as schoolboys, but it'd always be possession and games. It was quite simple. There was we used to do a really long warm-up, which was all around checking your shoulders. That was huge at the club, that everyone could scan effectively and do that sort of thing. So we'd do that for a long time, but the main part of training would always be something that they knew that us kids would be into and would love doing. So it was all with a ball, loads of possession and loads of games.
Brilliant. See, the scanning thing, that fascinates me, and trying to give the kids the tools. So not just sort of checking your shoulder as a habit, checking your shoulder, gathering the information in that you require to make better decisions. Was that the kind of thing that was done as part of your warm-up, or was it just developing the habit of checking each shoulder before receiving, or all the time?
I think like every time you receive, like if you didn't, I spoke about Eric Harrison, if he saw you and you weren't checking your shoulder, he'd stop the session. It had to be done. It was like, that was what made you, if you was a good player, this could make you a brilliant player. If you watched the best players in the world, all them lads that came through from the class of 92 would have been brought up on that. It looked like the centre halves, the defenders like Gary Neville constantly. Paul Scholes was the best at it. He's like his head spinning around on a circle. He just knows. It's like he's got eyes in the back of his head how he does it. I think it was just brought up from everyone, whether you're in or out of possession, you've got to constantly be scanning and have a picture of the whole pitch. And it's obviously I didn't have a career at Manchester United at the top level, but having and working on that scanning probably was one of the main reasons that allowed me to have a career in professional football.
Brian, that's really interesting to hear. So did you know the first time Sir Alex became aware of you? How did you become aware that he was aware of you as a player? Would he come and visit the training sessions and observe? Or I'm interested to see what his style was as a manager.
Yeah, so this probably, I'll tell you the story that it's not just about me, but it's a genius of Sir Alex Ferguson. I went up for that first trial week, and that end of that week ended up with us playing a practice game against Nottingham Forest. After that, we were all the lads, there's probably about 12, 14 gifted boys from all over the country that had gone up, got dropped back at Manchester Piccadilly train station, got the train for hours on end all the way back to where I lived. My mum picked me up from the train station and said, while I was travelling, Sir Alex had phoned her up and asked if I'd sign for the club. And that, as a 14-year-old boy, there was only one place I was ever going to sign to hear that. But it wasn't just me that he'd do that for. He'd do it for every player. The way that he treated people was why the club was so successful. He'd treat the dinner ladies and the kit men with just as much respect as he'd treat Roy Keane or Eric Cantona. I was up there as a full-time professional in the canteen at Carrington, and there'd be under 10, 11 academy boys in there, and the manager would know their name, he'd know their parents' name, he'd ask them a bit of detail. And for him to do that and for him to take that interest in every aspect of the club is why everyone wanted to do an extra run more than they could for him and put extra effort in for him, because of the way he treated people. And that is his genius, really, and why he's the most successful manager there'll probably ever be in the game of football.
Did that make you feel a bit taller and a bit stronger and a bit faster? The fact that he phoned your parents to ask you to sign first of all, and when you got there, he knew who you were, he knew your name, and he took an interest in everybody. I
couldn't explain how incredible that makes you feel. Like, even as a 14-year-old, even when the first team players, every day you'd be working hard as you can, because you knew if the gaffer said well done to you, it'd be the most incredible thing in the world. You'd do anything you could to impress him. At the same time, people talk about, did you ever get the hairdryer treatment off him? And there was a couple of times where he has shouted at me, he shouted at others, and it was obviously that scary that the great man's shouting at you. But what was even worse is a feeling of letting him down, because you thought so much of him and all you wanted to do was impress him. It did hurt a lot when he shouted at you, because it did feel like you'd let him down.
It's amazing how one person has that influence in a staff of thousands, probably at Manchester United in total. And everyone sort of looks up to him and wants to please him and not let him down. I mean, that's probably, as you say, a huge, huge factor in why Manchester United were so successful in the Ferguson years, and the reason why they've not been so successful afterwards, because that one person has that so much influence. And how did you transition to the first team? Were you invited to train a few times, or what was the process there, Luke?
So as a YTS, I didn't train that much with the first team. I was a real quiet lad, and I was one of them that had hoped that I didn't have to train with the first team, because I was more comfortable with my own peers in the youth team, where we just really like have a laugh. You're playing with your mates. So it was after as a first year professional, I went on loan to Belgium to Royal Antwerp, and spent some time out there. And when I got called back from there, and I loved it at Antwerp, I was really disappointed that I'd been called back to United, because I thought I was just going back to train with the reserves like I was before I went. But as soon as I come back from Antwerp, I was thrown in with the first team. And obviously, it's quite nerve-wracking training with these obviously incredible players, but they make you feel so welcome and are incredible people. At the same time, I was full of confidence from being in Antwerp, where I'd performed quite well, so I was ready to sort of have a go at it and hopefully get some minutes on the pitch for the Manchester United first team.
See, when you went to Antwerp, I was going to ask you if that was a struggle. You know, obviously different country, different language, different set of faces. You sound like you really enjoyed it. Did you adapt quite quickly?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I went out there, and there was two of my age that were already out there on loan that were quite close friends of mine. So I was delighted to obviously go and see them. And it just felt like, obviously, a different kind of an incredible life experience, but you just felt so free. Like you could get away. The people didn't speak English, some of them. So a lot of the time you wouldn't be told anything. It was sort of just a case of go and express yourself and play football. Obviously, off the pitch, a young person in a different country was an incredible experience. Like everything about my time in Belgium, I absolutely loved it.
Brilliant. You scored a few goals out there as well. You know, I can just imagine, you know, that increases the confidence. So you're learning obviously about men's football, the men's game, you know, physically, but you're also scoring a few goals. So you're developing, getting confidence. When you got back to Manchester United and you were thrown in that first team training, what was the standard like compared to Belgium, to Antwerp?
Obviously, the standards through the roof, really. Until obviously Belgium, in Antwerp, there was some good technical players, and the standard technically in training was good. At Manchester United, obviously, the standard technically is better. But what was hugely noticeable is just sort of the intensity, and what every day was a battle, really. They're all absolute winners that are heartbroken if they don't win a training game, let alone a game on Saturday afternoon. So it was really intense. It was probably harder than I'd ever done before, obviously, because I'm in with these world-class players. And again, going back to where I was sort of fighting and striving to keep up with my elder brother as a child, it was like that every day. You were just constantly trying to keep up with these incredible players.
See, when you got back, the training standards obviously through the roof. And did you struggle initially? And if you did you know some of your teammates just have a word with you and say, "Look, don't worry, you'll get it"? Did the manager put an arm around you, or did you just get back into it straight away and meet the standard?
Yeah, I think like early on, I was so confident from obviously being quite a favourite in Belgium to come in. I think I coped with it fine. There's times where, like everyone else, if I weren't performing at my best, I'd certainly be told. But I felt like this is what I want, because you improve so quickly when you're playing with players like that. So the team was winning every week. I'd be coming on in certain games. So it was intense, but I was sort of comfortable. I'd got to the point where I was comfortable in that environment.
See, if you weren't sort of pulling your weight in training, would it be the manager and the coaching staff to tell you, or would the players police themselves? I'm interested at that level, who sort of says, "Come on, raise the standard" to the other players?
At clubs like that, the players sort of run themselves to a certain extent. If the manager felt or the coaches felt need to say something, I think we had quite a running joke at the time, a lot of us young lads, when we played the little games, that we'd hope and pray we weren't in Roy Keane's team, because you knew if you were and your team didn't win, you'd be certainly in for a mouthful and told in no uncertain terms. But at the same time, he was like a massive part of that club in terms of driving the standards in training every day. And training was at a point where it was so competitive that you went into the game on the Saturday, and even training was probably harder than the games at times, because the best players in the country who were in the league were training together every week, and then you'd be playing slightly teams with slightly less ability on a Saturday.
See, you talked about Sir Alex Ferguson as a personality and a figure of authority. Players like Roy Keane and Gary Neville, were they to a lesser extent similar? You know, you had to sort of please them, meet their standard as well. And if you kind of let them down, would they let you know about it quickly?
Oh yeah, definitely. On the training pitch, you had to, no matter who you were, like it didn't matter if it was me, a young kid coming through, or Ryan Giggs, one of the best players in the world. If they weren't pulling their weight or doing training right, they'd be told in no uncertain terms. Like Ryan Giggs would tell other players if they weren't doing it. At the same time, off the pitch, it was complete. Obviously, they'd make you feel so welcome. Roy Keane in particular I couldn't drive at the time, so he'd go out his way to pick me up from my flat to take me to training. He'd help you out. He's the ultimate captain, really, but rightly so on the pitch. He'd drive standards, and when the young boys come in, he might have a little pop at them at times to test them a little bit, because that's life as a Manchester United player.
That's brilliant. You talked earlier on about environment in terms of the environment growing up, and it sounds like the Manchester United environment was one where, you know, it bred winners and it bred confidence and togetherness and team spirit, and it's absolutely fascinating to hear these things. Look, see, your first ever game, was it Aston Villa in the League Cup? Is that right?
Yeah, Aston Villa. So that was a Worthington Cup game where the manager tended to play a lot of the younger guys. So I think I was still 17 when I played in that game. And I remember we got beat, I think it was 3-0, but it was still when the final whistle goes and you just think, I've just played for Manchester United. The feeling was absolutely incredible.
I wasn't going to mention the score. It was 3-0. But yeah, you must have been proud. See, at that, when you make your debut, do you think back to all the hard work you've put in over the years? And, you know, is that like sort of you get beat 3-0, but you're so proud of yourself because you've worked so hard to get to that stage? Or do you not think about that at all?
I'm not sure about feeling that proud. I think it was just the actual buzz. Obviously, that was the dream. Like, you could just stop it then. That was like when I was 10, 11 years old, just to have played one first team game would have been enough just to have experienced that. So I think it was just the incredible buzz. I knew that it was just a game that I was playing in because the young lads played, so there probably wouldn't be another game for a while, but just to have done it, and then you can tell everyone that I'm a professional footballer, I've played a game. So it's just the most incredible buzz. Obviously disappointing to lose a game against a really good Villa team, but to actually, it is one of them where I've done it. I've done what I set out to do. So it was incredible. I think every player who makes their debut, it's something that they'll never forget.
Have you kept a shirt or anything like that from that game as a memento?
No, I've never been one for doing that. Probably at the time, if I thought how I did now, I would have done that. But I think I was so lost in the moment and all that sort of thing. I never even thought to. If I did do anything, I probably would have exchanged shirts, because Dion Dublin was playing for Aston Villa that day, and he was obviously a big hero of mine growing up being a Cambridge fan. But no, I've got no real keepsake from that particular game other than incredible memories.
Look, what does the manager say to you sort of after a 3-0 defeat? Obviously, it's the Worthington Cup and he's throwing the youngsters in. Does he sort of just try and keep you motivated, or does he have a pop at you?
I don't think he really had a pop, but he certainly let us know that no matter how old we were still representing the Manchester United, representing the club, and he'd select us for the team. So don't think that it's acceptable for Manchester United to be beat 3-0, regardless who's in the team that goes out there. I don't remember him being really angry about it, but he certainly reminded us of what the standards are. It's not all right to think it's all right to get beat 3-0 at Aston Villa.
Yeah, and the next season, look, it kind of really took off for you at Man U. You mentioned earlier on that you didn't probably play at the highest level at Man U, but you played a lot of games that season. You scored a few goals. You played in the Champions League as well. And the team are winning a lot of games and being successful, and you end up with a Premier League winners medal at the end of that season as well. How do you feel, you know, as a young boy at Manchester United, again, after all that hard work to get there, all your parents making sacrifices and things like that? How do you feel at the end of that season with your winners medal?
Yeah, obviously, that season that I played a few games was an absolute whirlwind. I sort of come back from Antwerp and then went straight into it and was with the first team for the rest of the season. And I remember at the end of the season, I was obviously delighted that I was part of the squad to win the Premier League. I didn't really feel that, I think if I weren't there, the club still would have won the league without my sort of input into it. But it was an incredible feeling to be part of that. But I was exhausted from sort of, because I didn't play many games, it meant that I'd train in every training session. And there was so much, there was never a day off, what with Champions League, Premier League. So I just remember being sort of mentally and physically exhausted from it, but obviously proud to have been part of it.
Yeah, I mean, did you honestly feel like that you didn't play a key role? I know you say that Man U probably would have won the league without you, but I mean, you did play quite a few games that season, so you must have played your part, and you must have been good enough to play your part, because from what you've told me so far, Sir Alex Ferguson obviously had a standard that had to be met, and so did your teammates. So looking back on it now, do you feel like, you did play your part in that season?
I think I played my part in terms of playing enough games to receive the medal. I think that's just how I feel about it. I'm sort of one of them people that don't maybe give myself enough credit at times and just sort of go along with it. That's just how I am. Obviously, it's an incredible achievement to have been part of that squad, to have played any game for Manchester United is an incredible achievement. But that's just my sort of perception of it. It was incredible to be a part of it. Did I earn that medal by the letter of the law? I did, because I was involved in all the games and that sort of thing. But was I a massive part of it? Probably not.
I think there's kids watching this interview probably just dream of winning a Premier League medal. Do you still have the medal itself?
Yeah, I've still got it. I still
brilliant.
It's in the. If you would have reminded me before, I could have got it out and showed you. But it's
you can send me a picture later on, Luke.
Yeah, send me a number. I'll send a picture. But
sure.
I do put it on occasionally for a bit of a joke when I've got people coming around the house and that sort of thing. But it's it needs a good clean, to be fair. That must be 20 odd years old now.
Yeah, some achievement to win a Premier League medal. You know, some players have played football their whole life professionally and not won some big players. So yeah, what an achievement.
I think that is a case of sort of being in the right place at the right time. I think obviously a lot of people say about that I've won it, and players that are a lot better players than me haven't won it. But it's just being in the right place at the right time. I don't think it's got any take on the player that you were or how good you were. If you was in that squad, you won the medal, whether you had played a huge part or a small little part.
Yeah. See, at Manchester United, is there huge pressure to win every single game? That's probably a silly question. Does the manager demand that you win the game, or does he try to remove that pressure from the players so they can go out and perform?
No, I think you're reminded of that pressure. And I think the players that have long careers at Manchester United thrive off that pressure, that they have to go and win every game. That was how it had to be. When we lost a game, it just didn't seem right. It didn't seem real. Excuse me, when we didn't get the result. So it was win at all costs, in terms of this is Manchester United and it is a winning football club.
Yeah. See, physically, fitness-wise, did you have to be in peak condition every single week? And was that a large part of training, or was it just these small-sided possession games that you mentioned? What was the first team training like?
I think it was still most of the time a lot of possession and a lot of small-sided games, but then the sort of fitness that you get out of them small-sided games and possession was huge because of how intense it was and how much effort that you have to put in. So I think players got a lot of their physical outcomes inside that training sessions rather than doing stuff alongside that.
I'm guessing playing games all the time, you're just continuing that fitness level by playing games as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think like at some clubs, you'll have a Friday game where you won't get much out of it physically because you don't want to get hurt before the Saturday game, and it's just a nice little game. There was never anything like that at Manchester United. Everything was 100%, and you had to be at it.
And who was the fittest at the club? Fittest player?
The fittest would have been David Beckham.
Wasn't Andy Gorham?
No, I don't remember Andy Gorham doing much running when he was there.
So look, after that season, or was it the season after? I can't remember. But you went on loan to a few clubs as well. You know, how come you went out on loan after that? Was it just to get games?
No. I think by the time I went on loan to Reading and Burnley, it was I sort of knew my time at the club was over in terms of being a first team player. I think after that first season, I maybe picked up a few injuries, which resulted in having surgery on my pelvis and groin. And after that, the one main strength that I had that probably made me stand out to get into that first team squad was really, I was so fast and I could run away from people. I probably lost a little bit of that, and even losing a little bit of that meant I didn't have enough else in my game, I don't think, to carry on and have an effect at one of the best clubs in the world.
Did you enjoy those loan spells? Were they just designed to get you back to fitness, or was it a mix of things that you went out on loan for? I
think it was a case of going to find a way. The gaffer sort of spoke to me when I was trying to get back in and said, without sort of that incredible speed, you're not going to have a career at Man United. And I don't think it's going to be real tough for you to have a career at the top level. So I think it was more a case of going away and trying to find somewhere to start rebuilding my career as a different style of player, really.
Okay. And then it was off to West Ham?
Yeah, so I went to West Ham permanently at the start of, I think it was a 2003 or 2004 season, and that was with Alan Pardew as a gaffer, who also took me to Reading when he was in charge there. So it was a really, I was ready to leave United. I wanted to get back down south because we'd just had a child, and I wanted him to sort of have that support where we didn't really have that family support network up in Manchester. So West Ham was a really good move for me in that sense. Did
you enjoy it there? What was the difference between West Ham and Manchester United?
I loved it at West Ham. I loved being back home with my friends and family. The training ground weren't that far away. In terms of club, it's a similar to Manchester United in terms of it is an intense club, an intense atmosphere where results were expected, particularly because we were a championship club at the time. Played some really good players there as well. I think I started off really well, but then again started suffering from injuries. So probably never excelled at West Ham, but really enjoyed my time there, which resulted in us getting promoted back to the Premier League. So it was tough at times that season with the atmosphere at West Ham. We sort of sneaked into the playoffs when we was expected to win the league. Alan was under so much pressure from the crowd. It was probably, I've never seen a manager come back from being under so much pressure to really produce the goods at the club. So it was certainly an entertaining season that I had at West Ham.
Was that the playoff final? Was it Bobby Zamora that scored?
Yeah, Bobby Zamora against Preston at Cardiff. So it was a real tight game, like a lot of the playoff finals are. I think the club had lost the year before at Wembley to Crystal Palace. I think it might have been Neil Shipley that scored the winner, and then I signed the year after, and thank God we got promoted that year.
Yeah, and then it was Stoke and then Norwich, and then you ended up at MK Dons.
Yeah, so after that, probably the worst thing that could happen for me at West Ham was they got promoted, because they ended up signing Yossi Benayoun, who played in my position. And unfortunately for me, he was a lot better player than me, which meant I was sort of surplus to requirements. So I went up to Stoke, enjoyed my time there as well. But again, family didn't really settle moving away from home. So come back to Norwich, which I was delighted about. Scored on my debut against Ipswich, which obviously is quite a big thing. But then in the last few minutes of that game, picked up a really bad injury that kept me out for another 9 months, and never really kicked on at Norwich. Then to MK Dons, where I spent probably the most time, where I stayed fit and really enjoyed my football there.
So MK Dons were in League One at the time. What was the difference in standard? Was there hardly any difference technically, and it was just the intensity difference, fitness difference? I'm interested to see what the difference is between the leagues in England.
I think in the Championship, the top 10 clubs are all capable of probably holding their own in the Premier League. So you can certainly notice the difference when you're playing a better club in the Championship. I would say the bottom half of the Championship and top half of League One are again quite similar. I wouldn't say that you notice the difference hugely. You would notice in terms of atmosphere, where at MK Dons we had a really big stadium but didn't have that many fans to fill it. In the Championship, 99 times out of 100, the stadium's full up and the crowds are really good. So I'd probably notice a slight difference in the atmosphere. But in terms of the football, I wouldn't say there's a huge gap between League One and sort of the smaller clubs in the Championship.
That's interesting. So you must have enjoyed your spell at MK Dons. You played a lot of games there, didn't you?
Yeah, I loved it there. Again, for where I was in Cambridge, I was so settled. It was a 40-minute drive to training. Got to play in an absolutely beautiful stadium. Always made to feel so welcome. Brilliant people there. And obviously the most important thing was staying fit and playing a lot of games.
Yeah, you played with Dele Alli there, didn't you?
Yeah, so Dele come through. We probably knew about Dele as a 14, 15-year-old. He used to come in and train with us with another couple of gifted young players that they had at the time, Brendan Galloway and George Williams. And they were all three of them really gifted boys, but Dele probably had that little bit more in terms of a bit more arrogance, a bit more confidence to go and play with adult players and really go and express himself.
See, when he was at MK Dons with you, did you know then that he could go on and play in the Premiership and be an England internationalist?
Yeah, so I had no doubt that he'd go on. As a 16-year-old kid, I had no doubt that he would go on and play in the Premier League. I was quite surprised how quickly he'd done it, though, how quickly he burst onto the scene and done incredible things at Tottenham. But I think seeing him as a young boy, it would have taken a lot for him not to have gone on to fulfil his potential at the top level of football.
Did you give him any advice about the pressure and the requirement at the top level, or did you just let him play and figure it out?
We sort of used to play in a similar position. I was playing in the number 10 at MK. He was probably the one that pushed me out the door because, again, he was such a good player. But we used to sort of work together in terms of the shadow play and just talk about finding space between the lines and that sort of thing. But I never really spoke to him about what was next for him. I think it was a case of him he was so young at the time where it was a case he was playing first team football in League One at 16 years old. And I think that's a brilliant opportunity, again, to learn yourself and play in the games, to get yourself ready to move up into a Premier League player that he has.
It's great stuff. So then after that was back to the hometown club, Cambridge United, and you helped them back into the Football League.
Yeah, and that was something that a dream come true, something I'm really proud of. The fact legs were sort of going a little bit at MK, and it was always my dream. From I spoke about earlier, when I watched Cambridge at 6, 7, 8, I used to fantasise and dream about scoring a goal for them. So I always wanted to play for the club. So it was a lovely way to finish my career and live out a few dreams that I always thought about as a child.
Yeah, and the season after the promotion, you got Manchester United in the Cup, held them to a 0-0 draw at home, and then went to Old Trafford in the replay, which you started. What were your feelings that day, going back to Old Trafford and playing?
Yeah, it was surreal, really. It was the first time I'd ever been back to Old Trafford as a player. So to go back out on that pitch, I remember, it was on the bus on the way to the game, and we sort of had an idea of their team. I was playing wide left. I think Paddy McNair was playing right back. And I thought, I'd seen him play. He's obviously a real young player that's come through. I thought, I had visions of myself having a really good game and sort of running the show. But I think the second the whistle went and he started running past me, I spent most of the night chasing him back. I knew that it was going to be a big ask to have a real impact on the game. But it was incredible to go back there, which ended up actually being the last game I ever started as a professional player. So it's a nice little story to end up with, to playing for my hometown club at the club that sort of made me the person I am today, really. So it was incredible stuff. I
didn't actually realise that was your last ever start. That's fascinating. It come full circle for you. Started at Man, your Old Trafford, and then ended there as well. That's great.
Yeah, it's a good story.
Brilliant. Well, did you get any sort of reception off the crowd that day?
Yeah, so when I got subbed off, I got a standing ovation from Old Trafford. To be honest, it was an incredible feeling. I weren't expecting it at all. It'd been so long since I'd played there. I didn't even know many people would sort of remember who I was. So to get that, it was lovely. And there's not that many players that can say they finished their career with a standing ovation from Old Trafford, playing for your hometown club as well. So.
Brilliant. So look, since lockdown stopped, obviously football training has stopped, structured football training has stopped, and we're trying to just keep kids active during this period, putting out content like this and little free training sessions and challenges and stuff. Do you have any advice for the kids that are watching about staying active during this period and the rest of lockdown?
Yeah, I think it's been a long time now that we have been stuck indoors, hopefully not much longer. But I think what we've got to be grateful for small mercies. We have got this incredible weather. So to get outside and play with a ball, there's no better feeling. So my advice would be, as much as you can, go outside, practice your keepy up, practice your passing. Hopefully it won't be long till we can meet up with others and we can practice our ball striking and that sort of thing. But use this opportunity. It is an opportunity in a way to make sure when you go back, you can be a better player than you were before it finished. But more importantly, loving the game more and getting ready to start all over again.
Brilliant. Look, listen, you've been so generous with your time. I've never talked to a Premier League winner before, and I'm sure all the kids listening to this will take inspiration from hearing your story. What a career you've had, and you continue to do great work with the Football Factory. So thanks again, Luke.
No worries, Kevin. Thanks for your time.
Okay, brilliant. Cheers, mate.
Take care, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.